AMC stock has gone parabolic over the last few days, and investors of all size and stripes are wondering if they should get in on the action. Today alone, over $10 billion worth of AMC stock traded, which is one of the records for AMC stock. And, a lot of investors are wondering, is this just pure speculation? Is this just pure hype? Is this now $12 billion plus valuation, this market cap? Is this possibly justified? I mean, AMC is the largest movie, company in the US and Europe, effectively worldwide, with 950 theaters, 10,000 screens. But can you justify this $12 billion valuation? And so, let's look at the fundamentals, folks, where looking back pre-COVID, so the 5 years pre-COVID, look at what the results are. And, unless there's something dramatically different going on, you're effectively in a best case scenario penciling out 200 million in, let's say, optimal earnings power, potentially. Here it is. You could see what their business was doing in 2019, $5.5 billion in revenue, which is effectively flat year over year from 2018. And all in, their operating income around 136 million. You have to make some adjustments to that. You do have M&A costs, you do have depreciation and amortization, you have impairment of assets, and then you also have incredible amount of debt that they're paying off. 300 million in interest expense that they're paying off relative to operating income. I mean, first glance, these financials look terrible. But maybe you're saying, look, maybe you're doing 200 million in earnings power based on these sort of fundamentals, potentially, which suggests, based on the current price, current valuation, you're looking at like 60 times peak earnings power, which in my opinion, this is incredibly generous. You are looking at increasingly a speculative play. And then it's further, I'd argue it's worsened when you look at the actual, like, what are some of the underlying key performance indicators behind this business, like the number of screens operated and the attendance. And you can see pre-COVID, this business was still struggling, where the number of screens operated declined year over year from 2018 to 2019. The attendance also declined year over year from 2018 to 2019. The number of screens have actually been declining for 2 years, number of screens being operated. So this is, and same thing with the number of theaters operated. So this is not exactly a shining star in terms of operations or what their potential is. When I look at this, unless you believe that these theaters are, just, there's going to be a new fad coming in where everyone just wants to go to the theaters because, hey, it's you've been vaccinated and, there's going to be a new era. But I just don't think the data is there to support that. Certainly you don't see that in the current, sort of living through COVID numbers. And this makes, me go back to the Ben Graham, the father of value investing, and who taught Warren Buffett, where he said in The Intelligent Investor, in the short run, the market is a voting machine, but in the long run, it is a weighing machine. And what that means is that, in the short run, who knows what things do. You get animal spirits, you get people willing to bid things up. Ultimately, they're playing a momentum game. They're playing a hot potato game of like, hey, could this get bid higher? Maybe you're playing some sort of technicals game of a short interest and forcing, some sort of short squeeze. But, as fundamental investors know that longer term, this thing, the stock market stocks are generally a weighing machine. It goes closer to what is this business actually worth over time versus what sort of the speculative hype in the short term. So what are my thoughts as I look at this? And, overall, a few things. First of all, it's always entertaining to see this, to see AMC, which is effectively, not to insult the investors or speculators that are in it. This is like effectively a nothing of a company. I mean, it's yes, $5 billion in revenue. That's awesome. 200 million in earnings power. That's great. But like the companies of the future, it's not going to be AMC. AMC is not going to be the next $1 trillion company unless there's just an absolutely crazy sort of short squeeze. But this isn't the type of company that's pioneering and leading the future of humanity. And so I look at this, and as entertaining as it is, it honestly makes me a little sad looking at it, just from the reflection that, like, well, wait a second, there's a lot of folks that might get pulled into this just based on the action. It's sort of like, walking into a casino and you hear a loud, roulette table, and now you're attracted to it. Now you want to see what's going on, and now maybe you put your own money in. And the reality is, the best way to make money in Vegas is to not even enter the casino and just be like, hey, I'm just gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold off. Like that's probabilistically the best way for you to, from a financial perspective, that's the best. Now that may not be the most exciting. The most exciting is, hey, let's put some money down on this crazy venture. But I'm looking at this, and this is, spike is, this is speculative fervor has taken over, and it is sort of it fits into a broader concern that I have, that you do have this sort of extremist monetary policy that we're living through right now, and it makes me wonder if this is just another example of what that sort of bubbles up as, is when you have these extreme monetary policies from the Federal Reserve, you start getting just wacky things start popping up, like AMC trading at a $10 billion plus valuation, when it's sort of been a company that's slowly but surely going into obsolescence, where it's like, well, it's been a secular declining company, I'd argue. Now, if you have a different take on this and what you think their earnings power could be over time, I'd love to hear it. If there's a thesis here on AMC that you think I'm missing, let me know. Like, if you think, hey, here's the reason why in 5 years from now I think their earnings power could be this, I'd love to hear that point that could justify the current earnings multiple. I suspect that most people won't have comments like that. Most of it'll be like, to the moon, baby. And look, that's the other part of this game that I think people are going to have a hard time with, is that, are you playing a short-term trading game that's driven off of momentum? And that game itself leads to dramatic price declines, because, if you're playing this short-term momentum game, any sort of drop is the signal to, like, hey, I'm no longer playing. Versus a fundamental game of like, hey, here's the value and here's the price, and I'm going to buy it because, the fundamentals are here and the price is over here. And I've called out stocks like that. And, if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Daniel. This channel is called Unrivaled Investing, because I'm looking for potential multi-baggers, stocks that I think potentially go up hundreds of thousands of percent. The video I have called out is Alibaba stock. I'll, post a link to it if you're interested, where that is the type of thing where I think the value versus the price is, there is a nice discrepancy, and Alibaba could continue to compound in the years ahead. Full disclosure, I own that. And so I look at this, and that's the part that makes me nervous. It makes me nervous that people don't realize that when you have a fundamental disconnect, where something could fundamentally be 50, 80% lower in the years ahead, maybe 90% lower, that, keep in mind, this was just like a $1, $2 stock a few months ago. Now it's, $26, and fundamentals, it's not like it's dramatically gotten better or something like that. And so you look at this, and you recognize from point A to point B, there's a good chance that this thing goes down 80, 90%. And so someone's going to have to be that bag holder. Someone's going to have to be that loser along the way. And so are you just hoping to play that game where you ride this and you're going to find someone else that's willing to bid it up? But it does make me sort of concerned that there are going to be those people that are going to have to suffer that pain and suffer that loss. And that's just definitely something to consider. I'd personally rather play the game of like, hey, maybe we can all be winners as this company makes a whole new market cap. You were a seller and you made money, as this thing went higher, and now I'm buying in, you want to cash out, maybe you want to buy a home or something like that. And I'm putting in my cash, I'm buying stock in something that I think can continue to grow. And so that's I personally want to play the investment game of a win-win, of a more than a zero-sum game. But when you're playing speculative things like this, I think it's much more a zero-sum game, because ultimately the weighing machine says, hey, this is likely going to be much, much lower in the future. Anywho, if you enjoyed this video learning about the current setup with AMC, what I think about the current fundamentals when I'm looking at AMC fundamentals, please make a point of subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, I appreciate that thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching.